like this, I see in your eyes. Bright as the sun is your glance of creation, which gives all life. Hear your voice, it's like a prayer to me.
Okay, right now on this little segment we're going to get onto various hem finishes. It's good to actually, as I remember I was saying before, it's good to have a part of your arsenal, a good selection of stitches depending on what kind of hem finish you want. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is what we call the blind stitch hem. Okay, so always try and get into the habit of basting your hem first. It will just keeps it in place better. With this kind of stitch we're going to do also, it will stabilize the hem for you as well. Okay, so first of all we're going to baste near the overlocked edge. Now I've got a very narrow overlocked edge on here, so I didn't really change it. Usually an overlocked edge is about 0.5 centimeters, but it doesn't really matter as long as you baste it near the overlocked edge. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here now. And the reason being, and when you're basting the hems, you don't put too short, put quite a long, can be quite a lengthy stitch length. Okay, so I've got one here, you can see. Okay, so there we have it. Right, okay, there we go. Now, so always try and get into the habit of basting your hems. Okay, just easier. Right, now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to do a blind stitch. Okay, now I'm going to use purple thread so you can actually see it on the video. Okay, now, so you got to pretend that's the hem and this is your dress, so your dress actually goes all the way up. Okay, now I work with the hem away from me. Okay, now if you pick up the hem, actually you can see here it's already in place now, the hem. Okay, that's why I baste it. If you baste it further down, it will flap, the hem will. We see it's not flapping, it's actually in position for us because we've put the basting thread close to the overlocked edge. Okay, so there we go. So now we're gonna actually work from right to left. Okay, if you're left-handed you'd actually work from the other way. Okay, but majority of us are right-handed, but if you are left-handed just work from left to right. Okay, so now the beauty of this, it's a blind stitch because it's hidden inside here. Okay, so now you cannot catch the right side of the fabric. Okay, you cannot catch that, so you got to pick up a bare little thread of the actual fabric. Okay, so we're actually going to do like a kind of a zigzag, diagonal kind of zigzag. So we're going to catch on the bottom here just a bare thread of the actual fabric. Okay, at the beginning when you're learning it, it is a bit it's kind of quite frustrating, but once you get into it, you'll get into the kind of rhythm and the speed of it. Okay, so I've gone diagonally down and then I'm going to go forward, so always go forward with the stitches. So I'm going to go forward, diagonally forward. Okay, so and I'm just going to pick up a little. It don't really matter if it picks up on the other side of this because this is the actual hem. You don't need to worry about that. That's hidden inside. Okay, I'll just show you that's hidden inside, so you don't need to worry too much if it shows through on this. But the main side, you cannot have the stitch showing. Okay, very, very important. Okay, now we're just going to go forward again. Just going to go forward, diagonally forward at the bottom, and pick up a bare little thread. Okay, you cannot have that showing on the right side. Okay, do not pull, please, because if you pull it, you'll get a ridge on the other side. Okay, so you can't be too slack, but it can't be tight. Okay, you got to have a happy medium in between. Okay, now you don't want it too long a length. Okay, so I use my thumb as a guide how far forward I go. You see, so I'm using my thumb as a guide, but you don't want it too short. Okay, so you just get a happy medium, and you know, because if you have too long, if you put the stitch too long, it'll flap, and you don't want it to do that, and it could eventually come undone. Okay, so I'm just going to gauge it and just go forward at the top again. See, I'm going forward at the top diagonally, then I'll go forward diagonally at the bottom. Okay, and at the bottom I catch a bare thread. so it doesn't show on the right side. At the top it doesn't really matter because that's the actual hem, so that doesn't matter if that shows or not. See, I'm not being tight and I'm not being too slack. It's got to be fractionally slack, but not too much, okay? And I'll go forward down and come to the top and go forward at the top again. And you'll get into your own little rhythm after a while, okay? Can you see that? So I've gone to top diagonally and now I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to go forward, always forward stitch, okay? And you don't go too far, you just go near the edge where you've actually creased it over, okay? And I'm going to come back to the top and I go forward at the top. And then at the bottom, forward at the bottom, just catching a bare thread, okay? And there we go. I'm not going to go all the way because I'm going to do some more stitches for you. I'm going to show you some more stitches now. So that's the blind stitch. I'll just back stitch and always back tack it to secure it when you finish at the end, okay? So there we go. So, and now that's your blind hem stitch, you can see. And there's your stitches inside there. And the hidden, okay? And the beauty of that's why I based it close, because it holds it in place, okay? Controls it, okay? So there we have it. So that's your blind stitch. Now we're going to move on and we're going to do what we call a herringbone stitch. So this is a nice stitch. I used this stitch when I was, this was the very first stitch I learned when I was an apprentice tailor, and I had to work for a tailor, and my very first job, I remember it, I had to alter all the trousers. So he got them ready for me, shortened the trousers, and I had to do this, what I call a herringbone stitch on the trousers, on the hem. And in the old days, we used to do lots of hand-stitched herringbone stitches, okay? People call them cross stitches. I still call them cross stitches, but they're called herringbone stitches, okay? And I still use that way on heavier weight fabrics of trousers like tweeds and stuff when I'm making the trousers and I'm finishing them off with on the hem of the trousers. So I use that way. So we're going to work from left to right for the herringbone stitch, okay? So the blind stitch, we work from right to left. With the herringbone stitch, we're going to work from left to right, okay? So knot your thread as usual. Pick up a bare thread again on the bottom. We can be on the top, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to go diagonally forward at the top. Now I usually use my overlocked edge as my guide, really, how high I want it to go, okay? So you go forward at the top, okay, diagonally, okay? Don't be tight with it, just be a little bit slack but not too slack, okay? And where that finishes at the top, that diagonal line, you come directly down and then you just catch the bare thread, so directly underneath, okay? And there's your first herringbone stitch. Can you see that? And we'll do a few more, okay? So where we left on the bottom, we go forward at the top diagonally, and then you get your needle and you go under the top fabric and then come back. Don't ever catch the right side, please, okay? Now, according to how wide you actually put the needle through, that will determine the width of the stitch, okay? So just practice on a piece of scrap, okay? And then, see, that's gone diagonal. And then we come down again, we come directly underneath. Just catch a bare thread, okay? You've got to just come directly underneath. You can come a little bit back if you want to. And that's your stitch again. So I'm going to make them a bit bigger, these stitches, because you probably won't be able to see them too well. So I'm just going to make them a bit bigger, okay? So I go diagonally up, forward, right? Go underneath the fabric and then come out on the other side, okay? And there's your diagonal first. And then you come back down directly underneath where you left off that stitch, okay? Catch a thread, a bare thread of that. And there we go, okay? You'll get into the rhythm of things once you get into it, okay? So I'll do it again a few more times. So go diagonally up, go put your needle under, but don't catch to the right side. Catch it in and come out onto the other side, okay? Don't be too tight, but don't be too slack, okay? Strike a happy medium. And then we'll come directly where we stitched up there underneath. Just catch a bare thread, okay? And there we have it. All right, can you see that now? and that's called herringbone stitches. Okay, I'll just do one more for good luck for you. So diagonally forward, up, go underneath, come across, there we go, and then come back directly underneath where you'd actually put the stitch above. Okay, catch a bare thread, and there we go, and there we have it, and they're called herringbone stitches. I call them cross stitches. Okay, so that's a good stitch to do. Right, okay, now we're going to go on to the last stitch here, and I did show you this earlier on in my earlier segments. I think it was on the bindings. I actually was doing a felling stitch. So if we turn this now, so the hem now is on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to do what we call a felling stitch, and I did show you this on my earlier segment, but I'll just recap and we'll just go through it again. Okay, so just put your needle underneath on the actual hem here. So you want to hide the knot. Okay, see the knot is hidden in the hem now. Okay, so just push that under so it's not shown. Okay, and now we're going to do what we call a felling stitch. Okay, so we're just going to go to the top, directly to the top where we put the stitch in, and we catch a thread again so it doesn't go to the other side, and we go forward. So you have to decide how far forward. You don't go too far forward too much, okay? Just a little bit, okay? And then you just, and the stitch is already formed. Now, a lot of tailors will actually do like a slight, it will actually form a slight diagonal stitch. So I usually go up, so it's usually more of a straight stitch. There's no right or wrong way, but a lot of bespoke tailors will actually go forward a fraction. They say it looks nicer, the aesthetics of it, they go, oh, it looks nicer. So if you go forward fractionally, you'll get the diagonal. Okay, so just go forward where you left off that stitch, go forward a little bit there, okay, and then come underneath on the actual hem itself, okay, and you've got this diagonal stitch there. So just practice going. If you want to do a straight, I mean, I prefer to do a straight up stitch, but you know, you can do a diagonal stitch, it doesn't really matter. So these are called felling stitches. Okay, so you just got to pick it up because you don't want it to catch on the right side, and go forward. Okay, don't go too far forward. Okay, and it catches. Okay, and that's a really good stitch to have. That's called a felling stitch. Okay, I just do cut them more for you. So I go straight up, and I go forward, and I use my thumb as my guide, you see, and I come back down on the actual hem, and I'll do it again. Go up, come forward, the needle underneath, come out, there we go, come up. You can go slightly forward if you want to, it doesn't really matter. This actually is quite a little bit tricky there. Okay, there we go. Okay, once you get into swing vins, it's quite a fast stitch. Okay, and there we go. So there's 3 stitches, so that's your felling stitch, you can see, and there we have it. So you got your cross stitch, your herringbone stitch, your felling stitch, so the hem's facing down for this one, and then you've got your blind stitch, okay, which is hidden underneath there. I think I'll try and bring it up, you can actually see it there. Okay, so there we have it. Okay, so hopefully that's taught you a few things, a few little various hand stitches. There's so many various hand stitches, but these are the main basic staple stitches which you can use on your hems of dresses. Okay, so I've showed you some of the machine stitches, and we're going to move on to the next segment now. Okay, right, okay, in this segment we're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you some narrow hem finishes. They call it usually sometimes rolled hem finishes, but I call them narrow hem finishes, same meaning. Okay, I use this technique for very, very fine chiffons. I don't have any chiffon fabrics with me at my shop, so I'm just going to use a very, very fine satin lining, very sheer fabrics. This is a beautiful technique to learn. And also we're going to do a curved hem, so I've just put a little curve for you here. So this would kind of, if you're going to do like A-line dresses or semicircular dresses or circular dresses, you know, you've got a curved hem. Okay, so we're going to do 2 methods. Okay, now always mark where your hem is. So say this is where your hem's going to be. Okay, roughly about there. Always come roughly about 1/4 of an inch. It can be slightly less than the 1/4 of an inch, but just come fractionally past there. The reason being, we're actually going to fold up when we've actually stitched that. We're going to fold this back to the original hem finish. So always remember that. So whether your hem finishes, mark a quarter of an inch lower, or fractionally less than a quarter of an inch, okay? So we're going to go a quarter of an inch lower. So just draw, pretend this is our hemline now, okay? Your dress is going up, this is your hemline going down, okay? So you can actually cut it an inch past it. It doesn't really matter really, because we're going to fold this up, and that will stabilise the hem, okay? So it doesn't have to be that much. I usually just come about an inch past it, so it doesn't really matter. Remember I was saying to people, kind of start to judge things, you know, don't use your tape measure, so just cut it about an inch past your line, okay? And then what you would do, you would press this up, okay? Okay, so always do that for your hem finishes for the narrow hem, okay? So that's pressed up. Now we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to stitch this, okay? Now before we go back to the machine, we're going to do this. So we're going to do it exactly the same way. This is your curved hem. So remember, pretend your curved hem was a quarter of an inch up, okay? So that would have been your curved hem a quarter of an inch up. Remember, you come a quarter of an inch lower, exactly the same as the straight narrow hem, okay? And what we do the same. Now with curved hems, try and cut past your where you're going to fold it up. Maybe about half an inch or something. Don't have it too wide, because when you turn it up, you'll have to pleat it. It will start to pleat it. You don't want too much of a pleat. It doesn't really matter. So I just come a bit narrower. So that doesn't have to be an inch like you do on the straight edge. You know, just experiment. Remember, I always say about experimenting, okay? So this can be a bit narrower. It doesn't really matter. You know, you can actually chop it a little bit narrower. It could be 3/4 of an inch, half an inch, but always allow a little extra. So there will be your hem finish. So you come about a quarter of an inch past it, and you just draw your line in, okay? Because this represents your curved hem, okay? And what I do, I mean, there's many ways you'll see people make. I mean, we want to make things simple, don't we? We want a simple life. So you'll see people, they'll machine baste it, and then they'll turn it up and press it, and then they'll do another stitch. God knows how many stitches they put in. We're just going to put 2 stitches and that's it, okay? Now, because this stretches a little bit on the bias, just be careful. So press it nicely, just take your time. And that's why we want a narrow hem, which will be cut off anyway. We're going to cut this excess off. So just press it round. I'll put a little bit of steam in. Okay, there we go. So that could have been a bit less, it doesn't really matter. As long as you've got a little bit surplus to play with, you're fine. Okay, so we're going to get to the machine and we're going to stitch this curved hem. Okay, right, now we're sitting at the machine, so we're going to do the straight narrow hem, okay? As I said before, some people call it like a rolled hem, but I call it a narrow hem. Okay, now remember, you've got to come down about a quarter of an inch from your hem where it's going to finish, okay? And because we're going to turn it up back to the original hem afterwards, okay? That's why we come down a little bit extra, okay? So this is the straight narrow hem finish I'm going to show you. It's the same way for the curved as well. Okay, now we go to the wrong side. The kind of excess fabric we've got, it can be anything half an inch can be 2 inches. It doesn't really matter, okay? Because this is a straight edge we're going to be doing now. So go back to the right side. Your dress is up there. This is your hem finish, okay? On the bottom. So I'm using purple thread so you can actually see it, okay? So I want you to actually do a narrow edge stitch, okay? It would help if my machine was on. Right, okay, so we're going to do an edge stitch right to the edge of the foot, okay? So just go right along the length of your hem. I'm just doing a little sample to show you, okay? Right, there we go. Okay, and it's gone right on the edge. Okay, now I need to put this back, the stitch. I use this for a machine basting, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So okay, so where we go. So we've got the machine edge stitch, okay? This is a longer stitch, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, now, we've machine stitched that, and now all we have to do now, we've got to trim off the excess, remember? This was like about an inch extra or whatever. So you need to go right down to the going to just bring this in a little bit for you here. You need to go right to the edge of the stitching, okay? So I want you to trim off. I want you to trim right as close to the stitching as you can, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Now I use like little embroidery scissors, but I can't find them, so I'm just using my big shears at the moment. So try and cut now. I'm going in now. So try and cut right to the near enough to the stitching, the original stitching line you got, okay? Can you see that? All right. So just try and trim this right to the edge, okay, of the stitching line. I'm going to carry on all the way to the end to save you the hassle of you watching me getting bored of me cutting it right to the edge of the stitching line, okay? So I'm going to do that now. Okay, we're near at the end, okay? Now make sure when you're actually putting your scissors, they're actually inside so that you don't cut. So make sure your scissors are actually inside, okay? The fabric, okay? So they're sandwiched in, okay, and then cut it, okay? Because you don't want to start accidentally cut the bottom edge, okay? So there we go. I'll just trim that off, we don't need that anyway. So there we go, okay? And now you should have this. So this is totally, see, I've cut right to the stitching line, okay? It's easier with smaller scissors, but you know, you can, you know, just experiment what scissors you've got, embroidery or whatever scissors you've got, but always stitch right close to the stitching line as you can. Now, okay, we're just going to fold this up now. Just fold it up. So you're going to make a narrow hem. So try and be as narrow as you can. That's the whole point of this. Because remember, when you're working on sheer fabrics like chiffons and stuff, you want a nice narrow hem, okay? Now we're going to go right on the edge again, and we're going to go on top of our original stitching, which we did originally, okay? Our original edge stitching, okay? So we're just going to get back into that, okay? So I want you to just, see, just go a little, just fold it over as narrow as you can, okay? It's down to you how narrow you want to go. But the narrower the better, okay? So I'm just going to go on top of my original edge stitching, okay? And then just, only one stitch will show on the right side, but endeavour to actually try and stitch on top of the original stitching. It just looks neater on the wrong side, okay? Now if I'm doing real high-end couture, I would actually hand stitch this in. I would back stitch this as we went along. But machine stitching is fine, okay? So just take your time, please, remember? Always take your time when you're sewing things, okay? Don't rush anything, okay? I'm just going to finish here because we don't need to go to the end here, but you'll just get the gist of what I'm trying to do, okay? Okay, and there we have it. So I've pretty much stitched on top of the original stitching, okay? And there's the narrow hem finish, okay? So there we go. All right, so that is one finish, okay? So there we go, that's finished. Get that out of the way. So now we're going to get on to the curved hem finish. Remember, if you're doing circular dresses, skirts, or A-line, you're going to have a curved hem, okay? So this will be your curved hem. It's exactly the same way as a straight edge. But this, remember the excess fabric, have it less, because as you turn it over, it will start to pleat over. So the narrower you have the excess fabric, it's fine. So I've put this, what, 3/4 of an inch or whatever, just under an inch. It can be half an inch, you know, whatever suits you, just experiment, okay? And remember, press it over. We're going to do the same thing again, okay? We're going to edge stitch this. So we're just going to edge stitch this, okay? Exactly the same as the straight narrow hem. This is your curved narrow hem, exactly the same way. Edge stitch it, okay? Just take your time when you're going around the curve, because it's slightly more fiddly when you're starting out, okay? Right, okay, there we go, okay? So, see, I've edge stitched it, okay? Right to the edge. Now, we're going to do the same again. We're we're going to cut off and trim this fabric right to the edge of the stitching again, exactly the same way we did the straight narrow hem. Okay, all right, try and get as close to the stitching line as you can. Okay, and try and use smaller scissors, which I haven't. Okay, I'm going to carry on to the end. Can you see I've trimmed that? Okay, I'm going to go to the end, so I'll see you on the other side. Okay, I've trimmed that now, trim that right down to the stitch, as you can see. And then we'll just, all we have to do now is, we just have to turn it up on the wrong side. Okay, and remember, get as narrow as you can. The narrower the stitch, the better, okay? So don't get it too wide, the width of the hem, okay? It's got to be as narrow as you can, okay? So we'll go back on top. We're going to go on top of the original stitching again, okay? So we're going to, so where the stitch is, we're going to stitch right on top of it again. And try and get narrow, a little narrow hem if you can. Okay? Because this is a curve, just take your time. All right? So this, the beauty of this technique, the fold actually stabilises the, when you fold it originally, it will stabilise the fabric, so it doesn't matter how sheer the fabric is, it will work on all fabrics, okay? So this will work on real sheer chiffons, georgettes, silks, whatever, okay? I'm not going to go all the way around, but you get the idea, okay? I'll just stop there. That's fine. I'll just cut that off, pretend. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's finished now, so you can see. So remember, so we stitched on top of the original stitch, turn over, so you've got a lovely finish on the wrong side, okay? And then we just turn that back over, and then we've got a nice hem finish. Of course, I would take my time, you know, if I'm doing really high couture stuff, but I'm just showing you, so at least you've got the idea of two narrow hem finishes, which some people call it a rolled hem. I call it a narrow hem because it's a narrow hem, okay? So that's what you do. You'll see a load of YouTube videos or wherever you go, and they'll machine baste it, and they'll press it, and then they'll do another stitch and take out the machine. Oh my God, it's just, we all want a simple life. I want a simple life. And I want to teach you in a very simplistic way. That's what all my methods are, okay? So hopefully you've learned something here, and I'll see you very shortly.
The